All right, looks like we can get going. Thank you.
Okay. The online meeting of the Leeward Planning Commission will now come to order. It's Thursday, January 20th, 2022. The time is 9:32. Pursuant to Act 220, Session Laws of Hawaii 2021, which amended the Sunshine Laws to allow meetings to be remotely conducted online effective January 1st, 2022. We're holding this meeting online. Further, pursuant to the Governor's emergency proclamation related to Sunshine Law in-person meetings dated December 29th, 2021, the requirement to have at least one in-person meeting location has been suspended through February 28th, 2022. No in-person meeting location will be provided during this time period unless the suspension is earlier terminated or superseded by a separate proclamation. We have, let's see. We have an update on the Sunshine Law change from Deputy Corporation Counsel Schluter, scheduled on the agenda today. The public can observe this meeting on the YouTube live stream by following the link provided on the county website calendar or by using the URL advertised on the agenda. The video recording will be available on the same YouTube channel. The minutes and transcripts will also be posted on the county website at a later date. I'd like to remind all participants the protocol for the meeting. Please silence your phones and any other devices near you. Only one person may speak at a time, so raise your hand. To be recognized by the chair before you speak, please speak directly into your microphone and keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. If we talk over each other or if our microphones pick up background noise, the dialogue can't be transcribed. Thank you so much for your cooperation. I'm moving on to the introduction of my fellow commissioners. When you're called, please acknowledge and please state if there's anybody else with you in the room. That's a new requirement under the Sunshine Laws, that we identify who else is with us in the immediate vicinity of us. Doesn't have to be in the building if there's people not there, but if there's someone in the room with you that you may be communicating with off screen, you have to indicate that when you're called. So we have Vice Chair Barbara DeFranco.
Hello. No, I'm here by myself.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner CJ Kanuha. It's on mute, I think. Try again. No, no, can't hear. It's not on mute anymore, but we still can't hear you. We will continue, and I'll circle back to Commissioner Kanuha. Commissioner Mahina Paishan Duarte.
Aloha. I have no one here with me. It is just myself.
Mahalo. Commissioner Faye Yates. There it is.
Okay, there it is.
Okay.
Is there anybody with you in the room, Commissioner Yates?
No.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mike Katusik. I'm the chairperson, and I also don't have anybody present in the room with me. Commissioner Kanuha, were you able to? No. Maybe if you try logging out and logging back in. I'll continue with the introduction of staff, and Commissioner Kailua comes back on. You can provide the declaration. We have Deputy Corporation Counsel Delilah Schluter, attorney for the Planning Commission. Deputy Corporation Counsel Deanna Mellon Lacey. Deanna, are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Attorney for Planning Department. We have Planning Program Manager April Supernaut.
Aloha.
Thank you, April. Covering for Deputy Director Jeff Darrow on items 1 and 2, and presenting item number 3. We have Planner Christian K.
Aloha, good morning.
Christian will be covering for Planning Program Manager Maya Jackson. Planner Alex Roy. Aloha, Alex, presenting the Director's Report on STVR and SMA, as well as Commission Secretary Noriko Sauer. Aloha, Noriko. Planning Director Zendo Kern will join from item 3 on. Commissioner Kanuha? Oh, still not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Chihu.
We're working.
Okay.
Aloha. Sorry, this is a brand new computer. I'm having some technical difficulties with this thing.
Such life.
I'm here, Clement Kanuha, Commissioner. No one's in the room with me. Just me by myself.
Okay, right on. Mahalo, Commissioner Kanuha. We are going to change up the order of the agenda. So we'll do the approval of minutes, and then we'll move on to items 1 and 2, and then we will take the presentation on the Sunshine Law updates by Corporation Counsel after items 1 and 2. The minutes from the December 16th, 2021 meeting have been circulated. Are there any corrections? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner DeFranco. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Kanuha. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving on, there's statements for the public on agenda items. There's been nobody registered to testify. New registration system allows public to register and log on up until public testimony is closed. Noriko, has there been anybody who registered for public testimony?
No, Mr. Chair, nobody.
Okay. Okay, thank you. With that, may I hear a motion to close public testimony? Motion by Commissioner Paishan Duarte, second by Commissioner DeFranco. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The new business, the commission will take up agenda items number 1 and 2 simultaneously. I'll read them both on. The applicant is the same, Aaron Kahananui, PL-SLU-2021-000002. Applications for a state land use boundary amendment from agriculture to urban for 0.992 acres of land. The subject property is located at 73-4413 Hawaii Belt Road, approximately 100 feet southeast of its intersection with Kailua Street, O'oma Homestead, North Kona, Hawaii, TMK 37-3-017, parcel 24, parcel 024. Item number 2, applicant again, Aaron Kahananui, PL-REZ-2021-000011, application for a change of zone from agricultural 1 acre, A1A zoning to a single family residential, 15,000 square foot, RS 15 zoning district for 0.992 acres of land The subject property is located at 73-4413 Hawaii Belt Road, approximately 100 feet southeast of its intersection with Kailua Street, O'oma Homestead, North Kona, Hawaii. TMK 37-3-017, parcel 024. Staff presentation will be by Christian K. Christian, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you. Happy New Year as well to the rest of the commissioners. If you give me a moment to share my screen, please. And can everybody see the presentation without comments?
What do you mean without comment?
I'm sorry, without the presenter screen.
No, we're seeing the wrong.
Seeing the wrong screen.
Yeah.
Apologies. One moment, please. All right, that should work. Is that better? Okay.
It's good.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Again, as the chair stated, these are two applications that we'll speak about concurrently. The first is for state land use boundary amendments and an associated change of zone. The subject property is located in the North Kona district of Hawaii Island. For reference, we've got Hawaii Belt Road or Mamaloha Highway running generally north-south through the slide. The subject property is located here, indicated by the red star. For reference, we've got Matsuyama Food Mart here to give you an idea of where it is relative to a landmark.
Hey, Christian, this is April. I don't know if everyone else is seeing more of a vertical screen, so your slides are very small, kind of in the center of the screen. The orientation seems odd. So we can't, it's very tiny on our screens.
My apologies. Give me one moment, please. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I'm having some difficulty here. Do you mind taking a quick recess and I can fix this?
No problem. How long would you like?
Just about 5 minutes, please.
Okay, we'll try to come back at 9:51.
Thank you so much.
It's because that screen is vertical. Christian, let me know if you want to test it. Yes. Kristen, if you're talking, you were muted.
All right, I believe we've got it figured out now. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
All right, so this should be a little bit larger on the screen. Again, as we stated, the subject parcel is
Hold on.
situated.
Mahina, Commissioner Pashandwar hasn't returned yet.
My apologies.
Told her that we'd wait till 9:51, and whenever she comes back, I think we would be able to resume.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm back.
Okay. Okay, right. Hold on. Okay, go ahead, Christian.
Thanks again for your patience. As I stated before, the subject property is located in the North Kona district of Hawaii Island, here indicated with a red star. For reference, we've got Mamaloha Highway running generally north-south through the slide, and close landmark is the Matsuyama Food Mart. The applicant is requesting a state land use boundary amendment from agricultural to urban for 0.992 acres of land and a change of zone from an agricultural 1 acre zoning district to a single family residential 15,000 square foot zoning district for the same area of land. If the requested land use entitlement changes are approved, the applicant proposes to subdivide the property into a total of 2 lots with a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet each, consisting of 1 existing single family dwelling and supporting infrastructure on each lot for estate planning purposes. The applicant plans to complete subdivision of the property by mid-year 2022. Here is the county zoning map for the area. We've got similar agricultural 1 acre zoning and agricultural 5 acre, agricultural 3 acre zoning in the area. Again, for reference, we've got Mamaloha Highway running generally north-south through the slide. Subject property takes its access off of Kino Ulu Street at the intersection of Kailua Street. The current state land use, pardon me. The current state land use designation for the subject property and much of the surrounding area is agricultural. However, the county's general plan land use pattern allocation guide map designates the subject property and much of the surrounding area in its low density urban designation, which is meant for more low density residential type uses up to 6 units per acre. The subject property is located within the Kona urban area, again outlined here in a yellow star, and is considered by the Kona CDP a infill rezoning for the area. Here is an aerial photo of the subject property outlined in red. Again, we've got Hawaii Belt Road or Mauna Highway running here, Kailua Street in this general vicinity, and then Kino Ulu Street. Subject property is currently improved with 2 dwellings. The first, which was built in 1961 here, and then the second, which was built under an Ohana permit in 1992 here to the right. Other uses in the area are residential in nature, some small agricultural uses, and a water bottling plant, which was approved by special permit across the highway. Here's the applicant's proposed subdivision map. Again, we've got Mamaloha Highway running here, Again, proposed lot 1A would consist of the original dwelling on the property built in 1961. Proposed lot 1B would consist of what is now permitted as an Ohana dwelling on the property. Here's some photos of the subject property and surrounding area. We've got a photo here in the upper left of Mamalohoa Highway coming on to Kailua Street and heading toward Kinoulu Street. The upper right is a photo of the entrance onto Kinoulu Street, where the applicant takes access from. And here on the bottom middle photo is a photo on the right-hand side of the original dwelling on the property. And this is a photo looking Mauka toward the Ohana dwelling. The second set of photos that we have here are upper left looking Mauka. On the right-hand side, you'll see the Ohana dwelling. And then this is a shot again looking Mauka of the Ohana dwelling. And this is from the top side looking Makai with the Ohana dwelling on the left-hand side. Since the applicant received our background recommendation and proposed conditions, they submitted a request to revise conditions C, H, and I. C is a condition relative to water system improvements. And we worked with the applicant to agree with their request to remove the 300-foot fire hydrant requirement, but we also proposed to add in this last line that indicates that any required fire protection improvements by fire department or Department of Water Supply will be met. So what happened here is we received some incorrect information from the Department of Water Supply. The 300-foot standard that they quoted to us is actually meant for more multiple family uses, commercial uses, or industrial uses, whereas for single family uses, the requirement is 600 feet, which would cover the subject properties because there is an existing hydrant within 600 feet of both properties. Just again, out of caution, we just wanted to add this kind of standard language saying that any fire protection requirements will be met as required by fire department or Department of Water Supply. The other two changes were just changes to information or more clarifying information on mitigation for the Hawaiian hawk, as well as the Blackburn Sphinx moth, which we felt better clarified what the requirements would be and are agreeable to the applicant's proposed changes with some slight non-substantive additions of our own. And so this is amended condition H relative to the Hawaiian hawk or eel. And this is proposed amendment to condition I relative to protection of the Blackburn's Sphinx moth. So these will be, you should have received our amended proposed conditions yesterday. So as you make a vote on these applications, these will be the Deputy Director's new conditions relative to these three issues. Finally, with that all said, the Deputy Director is recommending that we send a favorable recommendation of the County Council for both the state land use boundary amendment as well as the change of zone. I'm happy to turn the time over now to the chair and happy to answer questions as appropriate.
Mahalo. I think we will continue with the presentation by the applicant. So we have registered John Pippin, the consultant, and Aaron Kahananui, applicant. Okay, would you please raise your right hand so I can swear you in? Do you swear or affirm or tell the truth on this matter now before the Leeward Planning Commission?
I do.
Mr. Kahananui?
I do.
Mahalo. Have you received the background? Oh, sorry. Would you please state your name and the town that you live in?
John Pippin, Honaka'a. Aaron, go ahead.
Aaron Kahananui.
Kailua, Oklahoma.
Okay. Have you received the background and recommendation reports from the planning department?
We have, we've reviewed the conditions proposed and suggested revisions, which Mr. K went over just previously. So we're in agreement with all of those revisions, along with the untouched original conditions.
Okay. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Chair Vatuzik, Planning Commissioners, Happy New Year. Glad to see your agenda is abbreviated today, unlike recent past meetings. They've been pretty robust. So I'll keep our remarks short. The facts of the applications were covered well by Mr. K. We appreciate the hard work of the Planning Department and the Deputy Director's favorable recommendation on these applications. Basically, what we're dealing with here is bringing the land use designations in line with the use of the property. This proposed action, the rezoning, the state land use boundary amendment, would allow the Kahanuis to separate ownership of the two homes. Mr. Kahanui's niece and nephew live in the neighboring home on the Kai side. He lives on the Malka side. You know, good fences make good neighbors and all of that. And people would like to manage their lots independently. And he could speak more to that if he'd like. But I feel like the potential adverse impacts of this project are minimal or non-existent, and this one should be fairly straightforward. However, we're certainly ready to answer any and all of your questions and have any discussion you might like. Thank you.
Mr. Kahananui, is there anything that you would add?
No, John basically said everything. You know, I just want my niece and nephew to do what they want to do with their property, and you know, be independent of the Malka property, so they can do whatever they need to do. Thank you very much, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for the planning department or for the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Yes, thank you. Thank you for preparing the proposed amendment or proposed conditions. I just want to learn a little bit more about proposed condition H and I. Why do you feel like that's a good amendment?
I can take a crack at that if you like. Thanks for the question, Commissioner Paishan Duart. As written, as proposed by the Planning Department, the condition requiring a biologist to survey any tree, a qualified biologist to survey any tree prior to cutting, I felt was perhaps a little overly restrictive of the applicant's property rights. Mr. Kahananui does tree work as his profession, so you know he's well aware of how to do these things in a responsible and respectable process. So I just feel like there's perhaps a little bit more detail in the proposed amended condition that better reflects, okay, what we've got on the property already. It's practically fully developed, and as the condition were written, even if the tree were maybe 10 feet tall, non-native, you know, any cutting of any tree would require this additional step of having a certified or trained biologist to come out and look at the tree and say that there's no hawks, no nests present. When I think, you know, common sense can prevail in those situations as well. I have nothing against Hawaiian hawks. Obviously, we'd love to protect their habitat. Feel like the potential for this property being quality habitat is fairly limited. The trees are all pretty small. As I understand, hawks prefer to nest in larger, much larger trees, ohia or koa particularly. So that being the rationale for the decision on the hawk condition. And for the Blackburn Sphinx moth condition, again, this was just maybe a little bit of clarity added in that, as it was written, any vegetation less than 1 meter was to be removed. And that didn't really make much sense because you may have a lot of vegetation less than 1 meter. And I think the host plant of the Blackburn Sphinx moth, aside from the native Aya, would be the tree tobacco. So DOFA has developed these guidelines to mitigate for potential impacts to Blackburn Sphinx moths based on their life cycle. If the plants are small, they say it's okay to remove them. If they get big, then it's more likely that there's eggs or larvae present. So we feel like the proposed amendments better clarify that it's the tree tobacco plants that they're talking about, not really any vegetation.
Thank you for the comprehensive response, and it helps me to appreciate the expertise of this applicant and the practicality of the matter. May I ask another question, Chair?
Of course.
Look, I think this question I'd like to direct it towards the planning staff, please. My question is, if we were to approve this application, would this set precedent for any other applicant that has similar conditions? Meaning, I guess my specific question would we then now need to apply these conditions to other similar applications with similar habitat?
Sure, I can address that. If I may step back and further address your question about the EO protection, I did also want to point out that the revised condition that the applicant supplied is also more in line with our standard condition that we normally add for those protections. So just wanted to bring that up as well. I'm not sure how that passed through the cracks here this time, but yeah, we have set similar conditions in the past. To your second question, the precedent is already set. There are other similar rezonings and state land use boundary amendments in the area. If you also take a look at the general plan designation of low density urban, that's meant for more lower density single family residential uses, as well as the Kona CDP designates that area within the Kona urban area, where the intention is to have more residential development. So outside of the Kona urban area is retention and agricultural lands and those types of uses. Within the Kona urban area, as designated by the CDP, there are requirements for rezonings that lay out, where a rezoning is appropriate. In this case, the rezoning is again considered an infill, and for practical purposes, the entire lot is already developed with to the extent that it can be developed. So this is just a procedural way to allow for the applicant to subdivide the property, and again to be consistent with the future plans for the area as designated by the general plan and the CDP.
Hello.
Okay, are there any further questions? My questions regarding this, the conditions really, let me see which conditions they are. Sorry. Really looking at H through M. which is basically all of the boilerplate DOFA conditions. So I can absolutely see the inclusion of these boilerplate language for developing of undeveloped areas. But since this is a fully developed, fully utilized home site, which development patterns aren't changing by the proposed project, I don't necessarily agree with the inclusion of these restrictive conditions that would alter the ability to use the property in this case. Looking at conditions, specifically J, to protect any hoary bats in the vicinity of the project, woody vegetation over 15 feet in height shall not be disturbed, removed, or trimmed between June 1st and September 15th. I would like to ask the applicant if that would conflict with their ability to maintain their property and to harvest agricultural crops. If they can't cut any trees between those months, will they be able to harvest their banana trees or harvest their coconut trees or harvest lychee?
Mr. Kahananui, I'll let you reply to that. Just if you see any of these protective conditions for bats or hawks to conflict with, I think the question was specifically for bats and trimming of trees.
Yeah, basically I got avocados and banana and also mangoes, but they're not really that big of a tree, so not even 10 feet tall. So except for the avocado.
So under these conditions, if your mango tree was 15 feet, you wouldn't be allowed to harvest your mangoes during mango season.
I guess so. You know, sounds like it, but
yeah, which I don't think is appropriate. I think this is an overreach.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think the intentions of it are good, and I think it could be applied very well to undeveloped land or native forest areas. But to put these kind of restrictions on an agricultural area is very damaging to the agricultural industry and to the family's ability to utilize their land. And I believe that Mr. Kahananui would be able to identify a Hawaiian hawk on his own and be able to avoid impacting that hawk on his own. And I don't think that he needs to have a biologist tell him whether or not he can, what a hawk is. So he can probably identify that on his own. And if he needs to leave it alone, I'm sure he will. I don't think the government needs to tell him how to do that.
Yes. Basically, I do see the hawks, but they're after the neighbors' chickens that have chicks. So basically, they don't reside on the property, but come to feed.
Yeah. Mr. Kahananui, are there any ohia trees on your property?
Not on my property. They all no, not at all.
Okay. Is there any tree tobacco on your property?
No.
Okay. So, you know, because there's no ohia on the property, doesn't make sense to include language on the rapid ohia death. Doesn't make sense to include the tree tobacco.
I agree with you, Mike, on that too as well. That's something I was going to question. I grew up on Kailua Road. I know that property really well. You know, the the hawks do come around, but they're more up in the forest. They're next to the neighboring property. There's a couple ohia trees left that they do come around, but like Mr. Kananui said, they're trying to get the chicks in the neighbors area. My parents' house is up on Kailua Street, so I've seen that whole area, and I've known that property for a very, very long time. So I'm with you too. That language is a little much.
Right. And I mean, going further, to condition L, to protect seabirds in the vicinity of the property, applicant shall install shielded outdoor lights to direct light downward. Applicant shall install automatic motion sensor switches to control outdoor lights. Shall avoid nighttime construction. I mean, this is up in Kailua.
I've never seen a seabird in my life there.
Right, in a fully developed area where there's not going to be seabirds. And basically, if we're making this kind of a condition, the question to the county is who's then going to enforce whether Mr. Kahananui installs shielded outdoor lights over his 1950s constructed home?
So the answer would be if the conditions went through as written, then it would be up to the applicant to comply with that. If they're found out of compliance, then they'd be out of compliance with the condition. I can just speak to why these are added in. Whenever we receive comment letters from DOSWA or U.S. Fish and Wildlife that indicate the presence or possible presence of listed or endangered species in the vicinity, we add these as standard conditions just to kind of do our due diligence to try and protect these species. I understand in this case it may be a little bit over prescriptive, but certainly it's up to the commission if they want to remove some of these, or the county council ultimately if they want to remove some of these. And in the future, maybe we can be a little bit more selective in situations where they are clearly developed properties and maybe not have some of these issues. But we're trying to balance that the comments we receive from these agencies who are slated with protecting these species and our responsibility as well for protecting endangered and listed species. So with that, again, certainly the commission's decision on whether or not to keep those in, and we can look a little bit more in the future on how to better right size some of these conditions to the situation.
I think that would be appropriate. Like I said, I agree with these conditions for instances of impacting undeveloped areas where endangered species are known to be. But I don't think this is that case. I think this is a fully developed homestead where homestead uses will continue as is currently. So I don't see these conditions as applying.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner DeFranco?
So are there nene up there? No.
No.
No. Okay.
So yes. So
I
again,
just thought it was like a sort of an overkill of somebody having a home and just trying to, pick their trees and maintain their grounds. I think it could have been spelled out a different way, a little more general way of protecting all of the species, of course, that we all want to protect, but this does seem a little invasive to me.
If there are no further questions, we can make a motion. And we'll need to have two motions.
Sorry, may I ask, Mr. Chair, may I ask just one other question?
Of course.
Thank you. This question is for the applicant, Mr. Kahananui, aloha. My just thinking from the generational perspective, right? We're making a decision for now. My concern, if you can just share a little bit more, what if and any of your family members decide to sell your property, right? Sell the property. So what I'm saying is that it seems like you folks are very conscious about how you care for your aina, for your property. But what if if in the case that there are new property owners and they don't have the same level of awareness and value set and consciousness, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do we just make, my thoughts are like, how do we make sure that land is and our ecosystems are taken care of generationally and not just for today? Can you just share a little bit about your thoughts?
Well, basically, I grew up and lived on that property, actually on the lower house that my brother lived in, and I want to just keep it within the family, basically, and even though my niece lives in Vegas, her brother lives in the house, and they want to reside there and continue on and not keep it within the family kind of thing. So basically, just to carry on, what my Tutu Kinoolu started, and by Hanai, my dad and my auntie who reside next door to our property.
Mahalo.
So mahalo yaoi.
Mahalo.
Okay. Commissioner DeFranco?
Before we make the motion, Mike, then I think, and I agree with Mahina, Commissioner Prashant Duarte too. We're all into, and so are you, into preserving all these things, and we don't know beyond ourselves. So I think that's an important question, but it also felt, because I'm a farmer too, if I need to harvest my mangoes or my avocados, or I need to cut a bush down, I don't need to hire a biologist to come out. And looking at the way the land is, it is fully developed. So if we're to make a recommendation right now, would the recommendation include all this language, or because of this discussion, is it being revised? I'm unsure of what we're making the recommendation.
Well, we can do it a couple different ways. We can make a motion to send a favorable recommendation or an unfavorable recommendation. If we decide to make a favorable recommendation, we can do a secondary motion to amend the conditions. And while doing that, amending the conditions, we can alter or remove the conditions regarding the boilerplate Division of Forestry and Wildlife language that may or may not apply to this particular property.
Right, and at the same time, making sure that something is left in there that does protect the generational idea of it. So it's not like it's a carte blanche or something. That's not what the intention is, I think, in this discussion. Right,
I think I don't know what the language would be to make sure that the environment will be protected. What I'm saying in this case is I think that the native environment has been pretty heavily degraded by the environmental use of the property, or by the residential and agricultural use of the property. There's no ohia left. There's no native forest plants. It's just agricultural plants at this point. So it doesn't make sense to straddle this landowner with these difficult conditions, which would only be affecting their ability to make a living off of their property.
If I might jump in, Chair Vatusik, again, these conditions are meant to kind of call out some of the specific mitigation measures for the potential of these species. However, Condition O of the rezone is kind of our standard catch-all, which reads the applicant shall comply with all applicable county, state, and federal codes, laws, rules, regulations, and requirements for the proposed development, so on and so forth. So there is kind of that catch-all that if there's anything related to the protection of species that are found, then those requirements would apply, if that's helpful.
How about a catch-all type of condition indicating that if any state listed endangered species are identified on the property, Division of Forestry and Wildlife will be conducted in order to mitigate any impacts from the project on those species?
That sounds good. If I might jump in and just amend that a little bit, because we've been toying with this as well, to kind of try to come up with something a little bit more comprehensive. So the thought is, should any state or federally listed or endangered species be located on the property, the applicant shall comply with all applicable requirements of the Department of Forestry and Wildlife and or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
That seems appropriate.
Okay.
I think if it was up to me, I would replace the specific boilerplate language in all conditions. What was it, H through L or whatever it was, with that one condition.
Okay.
Commissioner DeFranco.
Okay, so are we ready to make a favorable recommendation then? Mike?
Sure. If you'd like, you can reference the condition that Christian just stated
And
as
each,
replacing
go
the
ahead.
replacing the other conditions, and that's are these conditions in both the rezone and the, okay, it's just the rezone that has those
Correct.
conditions. So we'll be replacing those conditions with the condition that Christian said, and then renumbering the rest.
Okay.
So those conditions are start at condition H and go through condition N.
Yeah,
Sorry, M as in Michael. Yeah, and then right. So I believe the first on the agenda, however, is for the state land use boundary amendment. So if you want to take care of that one first,
Okay.
and then we can move on to the rezone, if that's okay.
Okay, terrific.
so
Commissioner DeFranco.
I move that a favorable recommendation, this is for applicant Aaron Kahanui, favorable recommendation, I move a favorable recommendation be forwarded to the county council on the application for state land use boundary amendment, number PL-SLU-2021-000002, based on the deputy planning director's recommendations, which shall be adopted.
Mahalo. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Commissioner Kanuha. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner DeFranco,
Aye.
Commissioner Kanuha,
Aye.
Commissioner Paishan Duarte,
Aye.
Commissioner Yates,
Aye.
and Chair Vatusik.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now for item number 2 for the rezoning. And again, it would be replacing conditions H through M with the language stated by Christian. Commissioner DeFranco.
Okay, so this is for applicant Aaron Kahanui. a favorable recommendation. I move that a favorable recommendation be forwarded to the county council on the applicant's proposed change of zoning, docket number 2021-000011, to include replacing the items H to M with the language that Christian has proposed, and this being recommended, which shall be adopted.
Mahalo. And for the record, Christian, would you reread the language that will be replacing conditions H to M?
Sure. Should any state or federally listed or endangered species be found on the subject property, the applicant shall comply with all applicable requirements of the State Department of Forestry and Wildlife and or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Mahalo. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Kanuha. Mahalo. And any discussion? Okay, we'll proceed with the roll call vote.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeFranco?
Aye.
Commissioner Kanuha?
Aye.
Commissioner Paishan Dwar?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
And Chair Vatusik?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries 5-0.
Mahalo. And thank you to the applicant. You will be notified of the commission's decision in writing. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Chair Vatuzik. Have a great rest of your day. Aloha.
Hello, Mr. Conley.
Hello.
Okay. Returning to previously scheduled state sunshine law update by Corporation Counsel. Delilah, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Delilah Schluter, Deputy Corporation Counsel. As the agenda notes, as well as noted in Chair Vatusik's introduction, Act 220 of the Session Laws of Hawaii of 2021 amended the Sunshine Law to allow continuous remote meetings to continue as they have been under emergency proclamation. Currently, so I'm going to focus on the changes that affect you folks as commissioners. There are additional notice provisions which my office addresses with staff, and we make sure that those notice provisions are handled correctly through the publishing of the agenda and whatnot. So most importantly, traditionally, meetings in person have been allowed. So the Sunshine Law update provides us with 3 meeting options now. So we can go back to the traditional in-person, one-site meetings, which have obviously always been allowed. That's option 1. Option 2 is in-person meetings at multiple sites that are connected with technology, such as you see with county council and whatnot, if we need opposite sides of the island. That's always been allowed, and that continues to be allowed. And the newest type of the remote meeting is where all members and members of the public are allowed to participate by electronic means, such as what we're doing today. However, per this new act, there has to be one in-person site location available to public and to any members that would like to participate in person. However, that specific in-person location has been currently suspended by the governor's most recent proclamation through the end of February. After February, assuming that proclamation ends, there will be an in-person site location that will allow the public to testify from in person and whatnot. So that's the big thing. Another major item, as Chair Vatusik touched on, if you are remote and there are other people at your location that you may be interacting with, that may be in the room with you, you do need to announce who is in that location. So for example, if you're in an office building, you don't have to announce everyone that's in that office building. If you're at home, if you've got family members at home that may be walking through and whatnot, it is important to announce who is there and who you may be interacting with off screen. Additionally, if we do go into executive session, you will need to be sure that there are no people in the room with you, or you've taken measures to protect the executive session If there are other people present, then the attorney-client privilege that you are afforded during executive session could be broken or affected. Additionally, this is something that this commission has never had an issue with, but for folks appearing electronically, we must have a minimum of a quorum visible by video at all times. Therefore, if, like for example, if somebody was to shut their camera off, things like that, we need a minimum of a quorum visible. If someone is experiencing technical difficulties, we can break for up to 30 minutes to allow any technology issues to be reconnected, figured out, worked out. If connection of at least a quorum cannot be reestablished, then the meeting would have to be concluded at that time. However, if connection is restarted, then we can proceed. There is an additional option that we would have to plan for in advance, where the meeting could be resumed by other electronic means or a different link or whatnot at a different time or at a later time, but we would have to provide for that on the agenda, which is published, which we are not currently doing. But if we start running into technology issues, we can discuss adding things like that to the agenda for the future. Those are your major updates that affect you folks as commissioners. Please let me know if you've got any questions. In your board packet, you should have received a document that's titled In-Depth Sunshine Law Requirements for Multi-Site and Remote Meetings Effective January 1, 2022. This is a document published by the Office of Information Practices. There's also a link on the agenda to where you can access this on their website. It gives you the full breakdown of all of these updates. But please do not hesitate to contact me at any time if you've got any questions about these updates or anything others, any other questions regarding Sunshine Law or whatnot. And that concludes your updates. Any questions? All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, returning to item 3, Planning Department presentation. We have a presentation of long-range land use and infrastructure planning goals for lands under jurisdiction of the Leeward Planning Commission, based on the Kona Community Development Plan, the South Kohala Community Development Plan, the North Kohala Community Plan, and the Hawaii County General Plan. Staff presentation will be by April Supernet, Planning Program Manager, Long Range Division of the Hawaii County Planning Department. Thank you so much for taking the time to help educate us.
Aloha, thank you. I'm going to share screen. Make sure I share the correct one. Okay, you all should be seeing a full screen of the title slide.
Yep.
Okay, great. So yes, we're going to go over land use and infrastructure priorities from a policy level as it relates to the community development plans and the general plan. One part of the great news of this is that our CDPs and our general plan are very much in alignment. So in this presentation, I don't really separate that out. I kind of combine the policies together. So please keep that in mind. Also, this is really intended to be an overview and a beginning of this conversation. So we'll talk about it towards the end of the presentation of additional information that you all may want to see, or potentially departments that you may want to talk directly with to get more information on that. So in this presentation, as you mentioned, the regional areas that we'll cover, North and South Kohala and North and South Kona. We will focus mostly on the urban areas as it pertains to land use. And the most critical infrastructure typically is water, wastewater, roads, and also parks. I will also go through some current planning initiatives that we in the department are undertaking, and involves some state agencies as well. And then some of the related agencies involved with infrastructure overall are MTA, which is mass transit, Department of Water Supply, Department of Environmental Management, Department of Public Works, the State Department of Transportation, Office of Housing and Community Development, and then Department of Parks and Recreation for the county. So we'll start our tour with North Kohala and move our way down. Many of you are already and often see our land use maps on the left is the state land use for North Kohala, showing where the urban areas are near Kauai High in the lower part, and then up in Hawaii and Kapa'a up in the north. And then the same for the general plan, showing where the urban areas are in general, most of the land being either in ag or in conservation, which you see here in the blue. So the general goals in North Kohala really focus on growth management, access, housing, and infrastructure. Particularly with growth management, it speaks to, the CDP speaks to, and also the general plan, to focus development in existing town centers, including infill and things of that nature, and preserving open space and agriculture for historic and cultural resources. Access, as many of you probably already know, North Kohala is pretty famous for its work with public access, and it has made a lot of progress in that regard and continues to do so. I also want to point out, I think it's not always talked about. We talk a lot about shoreline access, but there's also a lot of Mauka access that we need to keep in mind. So I just point that out, that it's not just shoreline and coastal access, but also Mauka. Affordable housing, you'll see as a common theme in all of our CDPs and in the general plan, to find creative solutions to affordable housing, and something that this administration is currently focusing on. And then infrastructure facilities is another piece of it. The North Kohala CDP does not have as many details in this particular CDP. The way it's formulated, it's a bit more general, but the priority policies revolve around cultural and historic preservation, recognizing, which is critical for many of our villages, recognizing the rural context of our communities, which is very difficult to compare perhaps with other communities in the state or even other counties in the state. We have a distinct rural community sort of framework on our island. Also, it is pretty clear in this CDP and in the GP related to upzonings to be very cautious in the CDP with upzonings as it relates to being consistent with the goals and policies, which I know this commission is good about. Recognizing agricultural subdivisions and confirming that they're for agricultural uses. Just paying special attention to SMA or special management area areas and applications related to that, particularly with residences and subdivisions. Making sure that all development proposals have adequate infrastructure, which is typically part of rezone ordinances that come out of this commission. And then minimizing land speculation in North Kohala, really to save land values for affordable housing purposes, and also just making sure that, again, similar to the having development and infill in the urban areas and preserving those open space and culturally significant areas. Under growth management in North Kohala, it talks about acquiring coastal lands, which again is something that the North Kohala community has been very successful in doing to preserve open space and culturally significant areas. Downzoning state-owned properties for the same reason, basically, and then supporting diversified agriculture. I think that's also a commitment and a theme that we see throughout the island to preserve agriculture and also to have it be sustainable, and finding creative ways to have agricultural practices to be sustainable and effective. It calls for the county participating in the important ag lands opportunity that is outlined in the state statutes, and then also protecting viewplain areas, particularly the Malcolm Mackay view plains, which is also called out in 205A, and something that we have addressed to the best of our ability so far in the update for the general plan, which we'll talk about towards the end. Then again, public access. These are just a few of those policies called out that are in the CDP, as well as for affordable housing. I think there is a nonprofit right now in the Kohalas for affordable housing, but also commitment to furthering to support that, as well as to find creative ways to increase Ohana units and additional farm dwellings to help provide more affordable housing. In the infrastructure, policies are a little bit more general, but commitment to improving and upgrading a lot of the facilities. Potable water comes up often, as well as agricultural water supplies. And then wastewater is always, where is wastewater? Wastewater is always a big part of the conversation as well. Here's the ag water down here. So the Action Committee in its past and current still continues to focus on acquisition of various open space and culturally significant sites, as well as the public access to improve the water and agricultural water systems and transmissions, to upgrade roadway systems in general, and to create emergency bypass. This is another theme you will see in other regions in the general plan and CDPs, particularly with the action committees that they tend to focus on to support that affordable housing nonprofit, as I said earlier, and then promoting diversified agriculture. So now we'll shift down to South Kohala. Again, the state land use is on the left, with the pink being the urban areas, and the general plan, the current general plan on the right, showing all of the sort of the darker colors, and the hatch lines are urban areas, as well as the yellows and oranges are all the urban areas and the hatching. So the general policies for South Kohala, again, focus on cultural and sense of place, historic sites and historic places, traffic and transportation. They start to identify a little bit more detail in the South Kohala area. Again, affordable housing and emergency preparedness are focuses. Particularly, South Kohala is focusing on better procedures when in case of wildfires and evacuation and alternative routes, things like that. And then environmental stewardship and sustainability. Again, this is a common theme that we see, and focuses things like this one, prohibiting injection wells in the SMA if wastewater is not treated to a certain level. So it's a very specific policy to keep in mind when we're looking at developments, and would be part of comments from the planning department. Okay, from a land use perspective, to carefully evaluate rezones of important ag lands and make sure that they comply with policies that are in both the CDP and the general plan. Looking again at agricultural subdivisions and making sure, confirming that there's an agricultural purpose. The South Kohala CDP actually calls for reducing the acreage of low density area in Waimea town. Again, that is more to focus the development and redevelopment and infill in those urban areas, rather than letting the village sprawl too far. Again, affordable housing, restoring of upland forests. This is a very important piece of natural resources. Malka forests help to replenish our aquifers. They create more moisture in the air, more oxygen. And so they're very important to our island as a whole. And then maintaining agricultural zoning until all of the RS zoning lands are developed. Again, this kind of points back to the low density urban, sort of confining that to some extent so that that infill can actually happen for existing zoning. It speaks to expanding commercial area of the Kauai Harbor, but also to be careful and to mitigate any effects of that growth. So to, take all of those things into consideration with the harbor area, to mitigate impacts of development within Pulico, and it's specific. And this is mostly pointed to shoreline environmental conditions related to wastewater. We all know that there are an issue in the Pulico area with wastewater. And so to that effect, it also recommends not to increase density in that area and that it should be prohibited. Again, protecting our historic natural environment in the Pu'us with no subdivisions or acquisition. Some of the general plan starts to speak to it, but a number of the CDPs speak to transfer of development rights. So that's something that we have looked at. We still don't have legislation to actually enable it or to put it in place in Hawaii County. We do have state legislation that would allow us to do it if we so choose. And then to create a Waikoloa Community Center and Regional Park. From an infrastructure standpoint, it's a little more specific than the North Kohala, but to desire a Lalamilo connector road, a bypass, Kauai High bypass, which has been talked about for many years, portable water systems in the Waikoloa resort and village areas, as well as in Kauai High, to upgrade and expand wastewater, again, a common theme. A secondary access from the village, Waikoloa Village, to Queen K Highway, and which is also in the general plan. And then Paniolo extension to Kauai High Road. Looking at alternate evacuation routes, particularly in Pulico, and then wastewater system in Pulico, which we just talked about. So similarly, the Action Committee has focused on potable water in Kauai High, wastewater treatment in Pulico, Waimea, potential of a Waimea historic district. The Waikoloa intersection has been a big piece, as well as a secondary access, emergency shelters in the district, as well as the wildfire emergency protocols and alternative accesses in that area. And then north and south Kona. Again, state land use on the left. I've provided the outline of the Kona CDP urban area just for reference. Excuse me. The blue being conservation, green being agriculture, and then the general plan LUPAG designations on the right-hand screen. Again, with the red outline being the Kona urban area. The Kona priorities are very clear and detailed. In the transportation, it calls for a lot of multimodal systems and complete streets, and which is something that we've been working on a lot in the planning department, as well as a transit trunk system and hub system for the TODs. TODs meaning transit-oriented development, which is, by a short definition, is a compact, compact mixed use type of development and growth that is has many different types of multimodal transportation opportunities in that area, and is also walkable between residences and workplaces and commercial uses. So roadway connectivity, and part of this has actually been addressed with the mass transit master plan that is now in place through the Mass Transit Authority for the county. It speaks largely of roadway connectivity, and we'll talk about some of that in just a minute, including landscaping and the right-of-way. This is one that we in planning have been trying to work on for quite a while, and we'll continue to strive for, to get more landscaping in the right of way, particularly landscaping and which could even be dry scape that's appropriate for a particular region. So a lot of people think that right of way landscape is always plants and has to be lush and has to be irrigated, and that's not always the best solution to right of way landscaping. So there are many different types of landscape that can happen that may not require irrigation and things of that nature, but does provide a much nicer environment for the residents and pedestrians in those areas. There is a commitment to finish Anike Highway, particularly, it calls for from Kamini to Kaimanani, to Hinalani, but and much of that is already completed, but it does also call for the connection further out to Palamanui. And then a frontage road, Mackay of Queen K, between the airport and Puakini. From a land use perspective, it calls for a redevelopment plan of Kailua Village. That has previously been addressed by the Action Committee. We still do not have a redevelopment plan for Kailua Village, but is certainly in our sights to look forward to. Enhancing shoreline setbacks, that's another project that you'll hear about in just a minute that the county is working on. Urban growth management and trying to focus infill in those TODs and TND areas, the pink being the TODs, transit-oriented developments, and TNDs being transit neighborhood developments in the blue. To look more at clustered rural PUDs in a way to compact the development and preserve open space where can, looking for a variety of housing and affordable housing opportunities, and then a commitment to the open space network, which you will also hear about in just a moment. And then from water and wastewater, we have a lot of needs in West Hawaii, and we'll talk about that too, that the state is actually helping us do some study work related to water and wastewater. But to looking at the Kona Malka watershed management area, prioritizing water and sewer in TOD areas, looking at, and I know DEM is continuing to have this conversation of how to either expand wastewater or provide a new wastewater north of Hinalani, looking at better and improved urban stormwater management. Certainly we know that the Kona area gets, when you do get rain, sometimes you get a lot of rain and it floods. You get flooding significantly, and that's something that we need to make improvements on. And then I guess I duplicated Kona watershed management. So the Action Committee has focused on, and they've done some work already on the Kona Open Space Plan. Lako Street Connector is another priority that they have. The last phase of Anike between Hinalani and Palamanui, the Kailua Village redevelopment plan, and then looking for opportunities for affordable housing. We have had a subcommittee that has now finished its work and gave a report related to Ali'i Parkway, where they had done some additional outreach to lineal descendants. And also we're looking at alternative uses maybe of that right of way that's not necessarily a full parkway, but could be a trail, a walkway, or just a transit way for perhaps buses, bicycles, and pedestrians. So there are a number of different opportunities that, if this moves forward, that can be considered. One of the things that we participate in and have for several years since it was instated with the state is the Commission for Transit-Oriented Development through the state, and there is a state strategic plan. In the Leeward area of the island, we have these particular projects that are in that strategic plan. So looking at a potential transit station in the Makeo or Old Airport Park area and doing some site selection and analysis on that through the Mass Transit Office. Some affordable housing. The phase 1 has been complete for Kamakana villages. But this is one of the areas, and I'll show you in the next slide, that where we have a lack of water infrastructure. So we cannot expand this facility without identifying identifying funds and resources for added water infrastructure. Village 9, this is a joint project, and the county portion is looking at emergency housing, which should be getting underway in design and construction starting this year. And then the multimodal transportation, the Kailua Kona multimodal transportation plan, which right now is inactive, but is somewhat covered by the island-wide mass transit master plan that includes the Kona area. So another piece that we're working with the State Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has initiated a statewide project to conduct an infrastructure finance study. And they've asked each of the counties to identify an area to include in that study. And in conversations with all of our infrastructure departments, with the Department of Planning, we've identified this area of Anike corridor between Henry Street and Hinalani as that corridor, particularly looking at water and wastewater needs. It does include a number of affordable housing projects in the area, DHHL, as well as the high school, the Kealakahi High School, and the mass transit trunk system, which is identified along Anike, and a hub is predicted and planned for in the West Hawaii Civic area. So what we also like about using this corridor is that the work that gets done and identified in this particular corridor is likely to be directly transferable to the extension of Anike towards Palamanui. And this will include partnership with a number of different state agencies, but particularly HHFDC and Hawaiian Homelands. So now just to cover a few other items, and then we'll open it up for questions, and I'll also open it to the director to add anything that he would like to add. But just an FYI about concurrency, I think many of you probably understand what concurrency is, but it's a requirement for new developments to provide adequate infrastructure to ensure the public health, safety, and welfare of the property owners as well as the community as a whole. So our zoning code identifies certain requirements for concurrency standards related to roads and traffic, as well as water and civil defense sirens. So it has specific criteria in there that have to be met for certain developments. And then the Kona CDP also has a roadway concurrency, which is the map that you see on the right. The shaded areas and the letters just simply identify certain regions, and then the roadway areas are identified by section or region. And then the blue lines show what the conceptual idea is for those roadways. Green would be the preliminary alignment. Some of these have actually already been built. And then pink is final as of when it was in the CDP. So some of the things that we in planning are working on, along with the director, we have started the Kona Open Space Plan in the CDP urban area. Again, that red outline that I showed you earlier. So we are currently in the consultant selection process, procuring a consultant, and the CDP does still have a subcommittee that also includes members of the public. And so we will be working with that group as this particular project unfolds. This is looking at open space, but also trail networks and green space networks that can be connected in the urban area. Again, I've already mentioned the state TOD infrastructure financing study. We are also embarking and have for the last year or so on a public access inventory update. So we are going through all of our public accesses that we have in the county, looking at the permits that authorize them, the conditions that go along with those, the grant of easement if one was put in place already, and connecting all of those pieces and making sure that they are accurately entered into their GIS database so that it will be available on our GIS. We are also working on a shoreline setback analysis that looks at erosion rates for our shoreline across the island. Right now, we are working on a few very specific sites to do that shoreline analysis, and then it will end up in, we hope, a shoreline setback rule amendment, which you will certainly be hearing about. And as that project unfolds, we will provide additional information as well. The Waimea Trails is an ongoing project, and we are trying to identify funding for construction for Waimea Trails. The CRC, the county's Cultural Resource Commission, has two subcommittees, Planning and Preservation Plan. The Preservation Plan reviews the status of preservation plans that are in place and works with the agency or the landowner to make sure they get implemented and upkept. The planning subcommittee is a new one, and one that will be working to help decide on priority projects for the commission for any given year, and also look at priority sites for purchase and other things of that nature. As part of, we're working with Department of Research and Development on the Climate Action Plan, and we are running a piece of it looking at climate vulnerability assessment. So again, that's another presentation we could give in the future, excuse me, to present the findings of that work and further update you from R&D on the Climate Action Plan. Then we have the general plan update, which I will also let the director speak to in just a moment as well. So some of you may have seen this over the last several years of sort of the path in which we've taken in putting together the comprehensive review of the general plan. So we started with affirming goals and looking at all of the community development plans, and was really a great exercise in confirming how consistent the community development plans are with the general plan. And looking at the goals and objectives overall. Then we went through and understood all of the existing conditions and looked at trends and forecasts. So if we keep going the way we've been going, what will it look like? Some of you may have attended some of our workshops that we had a few years ago in this regard. And then what if we start to change things and do some scenario planning? And then what would it look like if those types of things happen? And then to weigh those trade-offs of different alternatives through the scenario planning process and looking at model alternatives comparing existing trends to potentially new alternatives. And then where we are now is really finalizing the phase 4 of the process, which is wrapping up the recommended plan, and something that we have been reviewing with this administration and our planning director, and will continue to do through this year. And then phase 5 will get us into additional public review of the plan. Then it will come to you for review and recommendation, and then to the county council. So just to recap all of that really quickly, a lot of the themes that a lot of the common themes and consistent themes that we see are the natural and cultural resources and the importance of preservation of those resources, infill in our urban cores, finding creative ways for sustainable agriculture, looking at other ways to make sure our neighborhoods have amenities similar to parks, like if developments would put in small pocket parks in lieu of paying fair share and things of that nature, it would benefit the immediate neighborhood that they're developing. Upgrading our water and wastewater systems and finding new ways to foster a vibrant local economy. So just a couple more slides on CIP, overall CIP process. We're in that process right now. We've spent this week with the director and meeting with all of the different departments and sending them back to do some more work and sending a revised list of projects. The main priorities from this administration are projects that are mandated by law, public health and safety projects that are required, priorities from the general plan and the CDPs, any kind of infrastructure projects that will support affordable housing. Again, that's a priority for this administration. Also matching funds. We are consistently looking for alternative funding where we can use county funds to match those funds to take us much further. And then departments and projects that are ready to go, that are not, the CIP has typically been used as a wish list. And so we're looking for creative ways and projects to put in this year's CIP that are much more ready to go, and that the departments have those resources that they need. One thing to understand about the CIP budget is that it's called an appropriation, which means it's appropriate for implementation and use of funds, if that makes sense. So it does not commit the funds and it does not commit to the timing. The CIP does live for approximately a project in the CIP as soon as it's adopted into the CIP, lives for approximately 3 years in there without having to be reappropriated. But it does not mean that the project will happen within that time frame. So the part that our planning director has been working with the departments on is trying to really focus on those projects for this year's CIP that really can get started in the next year or two. They largely depend on resources, meaning people and money, and also administrative priorities. So that's just something to keep in mind with our CIP budget. Available funds can come from bond floats, grants, federal or state money, and the like. And then what happens after that, when it's appropriated, is once funds are found, like a grant has been applied for, and then we get notice that we received that grant, then those funds are what's called allotted. And that's when the source and the project are connected. The source of the funding and the project are connected. So it's allotted. And then encumbrance is really just signing a contract. So it may be signing a contract for a grant, and then also signing a contract for the use of those funds with a contractor. And then those related departments, again, are water, DPW, transit, DEM for solid waste and wastewater, as well as housing and parks and rec. One of the things that we have consistently found in the CIP process is that we are so far behind on repair and maintenance, and we have so many federal mandates, EPA mandates, ADA mandates that are required, that much of our CIP funds go toward life safety and repair and maintenance type projects. And so the same is true that we're seeing so far for this year. We're not ready to reveal that list yet, and the departments are still working on that, but you will see it come through council very soon in March. But most of them are working on repair and maintenance or hardening. Parks and Recs works on hardening some of their facilities so that they can be used appropriately as shelters. Fire, for example, might be looking for a new substation in Kohala and police with a substation in Hove in the Ka'u districts. I know that's not in your particular regions, but relevant. And then MTA, for example, looking at hub and spoke systems in general. And right now their focus is on Kona and Pahoa. And that is what I have for presentation. I want to, before I hand it back to you, Chair, I just want to see if Director Kern has any more that he would like to add to this conversation.
Thanks, April. Aloha, everybody. Nice to see you all. Happy New Year. No, April, you did a great job. So much information. I can talk for days on many of these subjects. I think it'd be most advantageous right now just to see what the commission has to say on it. Again, very comprehensive, and really appreciate all the work that you've put into that. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. That was really amazing to go through all that amount of material in that time. Unreal. Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions? Commissioner Yates.
Just so I'm understanding this correctly. So this is wonderful information, a lot of information, and a lot of questions, of course, but I'm thinking that based on all of the information, that there's still a lot more to be gone through in order to really have concrete answers to a lot of these questions, like affordable housing and landscaping in different areas and the time frame, and so I'm thinking that there will be more coming up before the commission as you go through them, or as it comes available, I'm thinking, so that it'd be kind of like a maybe redundant. We go over it now and then later on we go over it again, because some of my questions were, affordable housing, of course, is a big deal. And I'm specifically, for my concern is like fire, because in Kohala, we don't have any fire hydrants to speak of. We're, close enough to homes, except for the newer subdivisions. So I don't know if that's something we address, at a particular time or when they talk about it. And also, I'm also curious about cultural and historical preservation, who'll be overlooking that, or will it, as it comes up, then we talk about it. And then I know about water, our farmers here with the ditch being down, the farmers here have no water for agriculture. So I don't know what all's been done about that, but I know it's a big concern for the farmers out here, because, we are pretty big farming community, that all the people here, they do, they grow their vegetables and everything, and they take it to market. But I believe they're having a difficult time because of water, not in the last couple months because we've got rain, but other than that. So those are some of my concerns about, time frame and, if people ask, we can, or who should they talk to, or those kind of questions.
I'm happy to jump in here a little bit. So you talk about time frame, it's quite tricky, because a lot of these plans within the CDP and general plan, they've been there. So they've existed, and these policies have existed. And so then it really comes down to, the will of the administration to push certain things forward, as well as the bandwidth and resources that are available. So for example, like on our CIP or capital improvement project list that April did, we could have $180 million worth of projects on there at any given time. Yet we really only have the capacity to maybe do like a $40 or $50 million bond float. So then we're looking at, how do we prioritize? Then it gets even more complex, because as you say, we have subdivisions that don't have fire hydrants, right? So now what do we need for a fire hydrant? We need a water line. So now we need to go and get that infrastructure put in to bring those fire hydrants in to serve existing units. Simultaneously, we are in a housing crisis, so we need new units in other places. And what do we absolutely need for those new units? Water. So now these really tricky conversations come up of where do we put that money? Do we serve the existing? Do we serve the new? Similarly to even like our cesspool conversions, and we need, you know, other wastewater systems, like we're tackling existing and we're also going after new. So it's really trying to find that balance. I feel like this administration is really pushing forward to find creative solutions and go through that. All of those policies that you've seen, we review as a planning department when an application comes in. So we review the projects against all of those policies, GP, CDP, and that's how we kind of helps make that decision. And hey, it's consistent with it, we can support it. It's not consistent with it, we can't support it. So you folks are seeing that in a project by project. The challenge is, how do we get somebody to do more? How do we get somebody to do, you know, more affordable housing specifically? And so like right now we have an area in that TOD node within that Kona urban core area where we could potentially do 1,500 affordable housing units. However, we can't get the water out of the ground to do it, even though the sustainable yield is there. So it's, you layer compound after compound after compounding, you know, challenge. And it's kind of one of those things that it could sit there and not a lot be done. And I feel like we've seen just for many years, there's a lot of deferred maintenance that's coming up, and something that personally, I don't like to not do, I like to do. So we're trying to do what we can to solve these areas. Doesn't answer all your questions, Commissioner, but it's some framework of these, of how we're trying to tackle these ongoing constant issues while those policies remain, and continue to uplift those within the decisions that we're making. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, thank you. I mean, at least it gives us some insight to it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Paishon.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Zendo, for providing more context, with, you know, competing interests and timelines and resources and so forth. I actually have just a vernacular question. What does infill mean? You had mentioned it in one of your slides. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means.
Sure. So infill development is when you're basically infilling an existing area. So like a really good area would be, say, the old industrial area of Kailua, Kona. So right where, say, the brewery block is, that whole area. If you were to go in there and start developing, that's infill development. So we're infilling in that area, kind of already existing area, already had an impact, already had the disturbance, versus going outside of that area. And now we're actually creating a new disturbance, a new area, greenfield development, they call it, and we're creating new. So that's kind of the difference between those two. You know, modern planning practices is to try to do as much infill as possible, and then limit that. And so we're trying to find that balance. I think the CDPs have done a good job of defining those urban core areas, but that's what it is.
Commissioner DeFranco.
I really appreciate the presentation, you know, and it's interesting because it's about policy and it's about an overview of policy. And so if you're sort of a hands-on person that wants to find out actually what's happening, this doesn't actually address that part of me that wants to know where these things are actually taking place and when they're taking place. So, you know, I sit in South Kona and we didn't talk about that at all because it's all focused on the urban district of, you know, Kona town. So South Kona is not even involved in the presentation hardly at all. But, you know, for me, there were a couple of things like, you know, we did sit and look at Palamanui's park structure going to happen. You know, those are things I want to know. So when is this going to happen? When is Palamanui going to provide the parks there? You know, when is the idea of a new hospital going to come for us in North and South Kona? You know, that would affect everybody. Where are those types of projects happening? Are they happening? You know, at one time, I remember the CIP had money to widen the highway from, Henry Street to Cam 3, but I don't think it's even on the CIP anymore. So now we heard a tiny bit about maybe an Ali'i bypass, but connector roads for tsunami, all of these things are coming up for us. You mentioned Laco Street going through, but it doesn't mean so much to me as when is that going to happen and what's happening around the Laco Street. Is there a development proposed there? Those are things that I am particularly interested in and would like to maybe have it put for another meeting where we get more of the meat like that we get addressed to hear a little bit more about the actual projects that are being proposed. But thank you. I liked the overview. It was very thorough and it was a lot of ground to cover. But I sat on the CDP for 4 or 5 years and listened to all of these presentations for a long time. But, I like the action part and to know, what's boots on the ground, so to speak, for me. Thank you.
I think that the key for us here is that we are reviewing specific projects majority of the time, right? We will be reviewing the general plan, we'll be reviewing any updates to community development plans and so forth. But majority of the time, we are reviewing specific applications. And the reason why we requested to have this overview of the community development plans and CIP goals is so that when we are reviewing these specific projects, permits, and so forth, we know where they fit within this bigger picture of what needs to be done so that we can condition those developments appropriately to meet the goals that are established in these development plans, these larger guiding documents for what the community needs, as a way of us being able to use that information to incorporate it on a small scale when reviewing a specific project.
And to add to that and maybe help Commissioner DeFranco's frustration that I also find is there's all, in the past it's been somewhat, siloed with departments. And I think we're doing a good job of working to adjust those and break those down. In my mind, I would like to see our project list a year out in advance where they're design shovel ready and on a list. So, that doesn't exist the way that we'd like to have that, but it should. And it's something that that our current Department of Public Works Director is on board with too. And so really saying, hey, planning, why don't you help, you guys plan where this goes and we'll start doing it. So we're doing it. It's a very different dialogue. So that's what we're working towards. It's not happening fast enough. But that will ultimately get it so we can have a bit more of a framework on what that would look like. And that's what we're trying to uplift into the general plan and make the general plan more of a countywide document. It is, but more adopted by the other departments. So that's why we have to go back out, get more buy-in from them, bring them into it and say, this is the guiding document and the CDPs are part of that. And we're moving forward with those. And at some point, Chair, if you guys want, we can, request DPW folks to come in and talk about some of their roadway priorities, et cetera, et cetera.
Is that something that you would like to see? Yep. Okay. I think that'd be a good thing. Commissioner DeFranco.
Yeah, also, we have Kealake, Kuabeho, Kona, 2 steps. We in South Kona have areas that we want to know what is planned for those. I mean, I thought there was some things going on, but in this presentation we didn't even touch it. So in my community, that's sort of for me to go back and be able to tell people what's happening, or even for me to know what is the plan, would be good to know.
Absolutely.
Is there a reason why North and South Kohala is split into 2 separate community development plans, but Kona is lumped into one?
April?
The history of the beast. There are some of us who would like to see those 2 combined, and others who prefer that they not be combined, but it's simply the way it was done in the beginning when council initiated the first community development plans. And so they were done separately in the Kohalas and done together in Kona. We all kind of wish there were a little more consistency in that regard. So I do understand the question, but I don't have much of a better answer than that. We all of our regions, I think this is one thing to say that, you know, North Kona is what it is, South Kona is what it is. And even within North Kona, there are very distinct and different regions and environments and different types of urban and rural areas. And I think we can say the same for all of our different regions, that they're very distinct. But there are enough similarities that I think some of them could be combined, but that's yet to be seen in the future. So
basically lumpers versus splitters.
So real quick on the DPW side of it. So Christian, when Maya comes back, let's circle up with her and talk story about that. We'll try to fit it in. We'll give them some advance notice, and then we'll work on fitting it into a time period where the agenda isn't too heavy. I don't think we want to have that presentation on a day that we have a ton of applications coming in. So we'll work on that one.
Good.
So can anybody speak to Laco Street? Can anybody give me an update on Laco Street? What that means? Anybody there?
Yeah, I can say that I've spoke with the landowner and his representative on what some potentiality. I don't have specifics, honestly, they didn't give it to me, but I talked with him and the mayor. It's a really big priority to get Laco Street, put in there, trying to do it in basically a public-private partnership type of way, because as you guys know, that the landowner there, it runs through his, their property. So that conversation is going. I know Bobby Command is also working with them. I don't have a lot of specifics we can give other than it is going. I did shake the landowner's hands about 4 weeks ago saying hi, and we had the beginning of the conversation. So it's in motion. I think we'll be hearing quite a bit more of it. I think they're trying to avoid what happened last time, where they kind of made an announcement and said, hey, this is happening, and then things started to change, because a lot of people got their hopes up. I know I certainly did. And then all of a sudden it's like, what happened? So whatever they're doing, however it comes out, I want to make sure that's very actionable. And we're on board to make sure that the process is as responsible and as smooth and as efficient as possible.
And one more question, the wastewater connectors on Ali'i Drive, is anything happening with anything along there, Kahalua Beach Park, and in that whole area of those homes that aren't connected to sewer lines? Has anything ever happened with those?
I personally don't have an answer to that. I'm not sure if any of my team members do, but we can certainly inquire with DEM and shoot you back a note on that at least, or put you in the contact with the person that could answer that directly.
And then with the new wastewater plant, is there one happening? I heard we had a deadline with the some kind of federal EPA thing for Kalakahe wastewater place.
Yeah, they're working on that. There's an item in the CIP request right now that involves that. They're actually looking at potentially changing from the lagoon into actual sand filtration system that could turn it into the R1, that could actually have some good ramifications about how that would move forward in a positive way. My understanding is that they're working on a section of that here coming up and basically testing that out. So that is in motion. My understanding is that wastewater treatment facility, it does basically 5 million, it can do 5 million gallons a day. But once kind of the West Hawaii Business Park is filled out in some of these areas, we're going to be at capacity. So it's now looking at, is there an expansion? Is there a new area? And the other thing with Kalakahe, it's also in, we need to really look at it from a resilience standpoint with climate change and sea level rise, et cetera. So that's the conversations that we're having with them, and they're working on it, not as fast as we want it to be done.
And then one more point, I thought I saw on a slide or heard that the extension of the Ani Cave from Hinalani to Kamininani, it was almost done. What did that mean? I mean, I was on a slide. I'm not sure that anything has been done.
I think that was the TOD slide that she showed with the potential for it to go that other way. You probably know as much as we do on that specific. I think that was probably maybe just a miscommunication on that one. But if we look at that TOD core area as we solve for that, it helps as we move towards Kaiminani on that. Not that it's being built right now or anything. To me, you know, like something like Laco Street would take precedence over that in my mind.
Okay. Any further questions from commissioners?
Well, it was sort of just on a report that was sent out on vacation rentals that we got.
Yeah.
Did you all get those?
That's going to be the next agenda
Oh, that's
item.
the next one. Okay, sorry.
Any other on the planning department presentation on long range planning goals? No? Okay. April, thank you again for your time. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, moving on to planning director's report. Item 1 is a report on short-term vacation rentals, SCBR program for lands under jurisdiction of the Leeward Planning Commission. Who's going to be presenting?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Alex Roy was going to present that. He's on here. Just give me a moment. Oh, there he is. All right.
This is the STVR. You should have gotten a spreadsheet and then a small synopsis. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is data that's collected via the Administrative Permits Division. So really all I did was compile the data into a format that was readable. It's broken down island-wide, but then also for the districts that are under the jurisdiction of the Leeward Planning Commission. So that would be North Kohala, South Kohala, North Kona, and South Kona. South Kohala, North Kona are, of course, the heavy hitters with the STVRs versus North Kohala and South Kona. We were able to add the number of complaints that have been received by the planning department since 2019 for each of the districts. We didn't break it down by per year. So that's what that means. So these are the number of complaints that have been received related to an STVR since 2019. So it'd be 2019 to December 2021. So is there any questions on, does anybody not understand what this data is showing? Okay.
I don't, either I'm losing my mind or I'm losing my place, but I don't have anything that shows me any numbers.
Did the other commissioners?
And specifically, I was curious to know, based on us going through that, a year or so ago, I had wanted to know, because there are so many people who did not or had not been paying what they should be paying, what happened, how many more people did we get? And I guess for me, the problem that I had in my mind is that we were paying, to the state so much money out of their TAT because, we had all these supposedly vacation rentals, et cetera, and yet people were not paying what they should have been paying. And so I was concerned about, okay, so we went through all of this. So based on what we had previously to what we have now, where are we?
So, Commissioner Yates, I can speak to that to a degree. we had, so when the short-term vacation rental bill came into effect, it categorized them into two different areas: STVRs as just basically your standard short-term vacation rental, and then the non-conforming use certificates for those. On the initial onset of any new STVR, and those would be the ones that are in the permitted areas, they have to show that they have their general excise tax and their TAT tax and all of that information. They get a registration and then they move on. And currently, once they register and move on, it just goes out there and there's not a set follow-up on them. Now with the NUCs, so the non-conforming use certificates, they come in and they pay a fee and they basically file a renewal each year. And within that, the renewal, they show that they're paid their taxes, that they're current on their taxes and all of those things, and they pay a fee. So we're actually monitoring these NUCs, the non-conforming use certificates, which are now about less than a quarter of the overall short-term vacation rentals, but we don't do that so much for the new STVR. So it's something that we're working on. I'm currently working on with a council member to revise the short-term vacation rental legislation bill, which you folks would see, that would adjust that to have annual monitoring on those, or basically compliance checks, especially now that we are responsible for collecting our own portion of the TAT. It even underscores that further. So collectively with the mayor's office, real property tax office, planning department, and the council will be working on trying to bridge some of these gaps and fill some of the holes. Now it's thought that they're being good and they're paying their TAT and GE. And my feeling is that if not all, majority probably are, and there's probably some that are slipping by. And so with this kind of cleanup on it, it would be a way to ensure that that's happening, as well as just, I don't think, just bring a little bit more responsibility into it. You know, it was a really heavy lift with that bill when it came through, and it really actually did a lot of challenging, what's the right word? It was really rough for the planning department, and honestly wasn't very fair to the planning department. It took about 2 years to recover from that, from the volume that was put on there versus having it staged out. So now that we've kind of come back, we're back to a good base level, and now we can look and kind of see what's working and what's not working. Those are some of the areas that I see would definitely be low-hanging fruit for improvement. We're still seeing a increase in short-term vacation rentals. Every year people are coming in for them in the areas that they can have them, say like in the Waikoloa Beach Resort or in the, the condominiums in certain places, etc. The non-conforming use certificates, we're seeing those fall off. They can't increase because we don't have a mechanism for any of those. Those were set, and that was a finite number at that point in time. And we're seeing basically an attrition of those. We're losing them every year right now. So some people say, I've just bought it, I want to live in the house, I don't want the NUC, and so they let it go. Or maybe they weren't in compliance, or there was something off, so then they can't get it and it's gone. So we're seeing a bit of a reduction in those, and still an increase in the general short-term vacation rentals in the permitted areas. And we can resend you the spreadsheets just so you have those at your fingertips.
I was mostly concerned about it because, we have new people coming on, and like you said, maybe some people dropping off. But I'm thinking with our, if they can track all of us who own property and have us pay our taxes or else get penalized for it, that I would think that this would be something that they can do to these people who have, these, whatever you call them, STVRs, that, it's just all in fairness. It's not because I do, you do, or whatever. I just think that it's only right that, they pay their fair share like all of us.
Absolutely. And we are focused on that with the real property tax office to ensure that. And further, they have a different property tax classification as well. So we want to make sure that their property tax classification lines up with that use. So we are putting together some framework for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Moving on to the report on special management area determinations, minor permits, and enforcement action issued by the planning director. Alex again?
Yeah. Did anybody have any questions about anything that you read? I wanted to make us a little quick statement once you get through your questions.
Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Well, Maya and I, since she's taken over the management of the planning division, Maya and I have been working steadily to try to improve the SMA program. With the loss of Esther, I am now the only SMA planner for the whole county. So it's been a bit challenging trying to kind of keep up with some of the work, but we're looking to get a new planner hired on and to fill Esther's position. But some of the things we've done to date is improve the application, really trying to make it easier for people through the EPIC system to apply and understand why they're applying in the special management area. And that includes providing more guidance documents, more information to the public. And we're working to put, and I know this has come up in the past, we all know the SMA majors and the minors get published, but the assessments do not. So we're looking to for a mechanism to put assessments onto our website where a citizen could search and take a look at information on an assessment where they may not otherwise know that it's actually being put forth. So these are projects that are exempt or exempt actions, but are still projects. So they get an exempt letter or an approval via the assessment, but there's no way for the public to kind of figure that out. So Maya and I have been working really hard to try to figure a way to get that information out to the public. So just touching base that we're trying to improve the SMA program, trying to make it more accessible and easier for the public to understand, but then also allow us to provide the information to you guys to make these, the decisions you need to. And we've done the training with you folks on SMA and CZM. So we're hoping that as we move forward through this year, things will kind of tighten up. But it's a lot of things have changed over the past couple of years, so we're trying to improve that system. So I just wanted to kind of let you guys know that we're working to do that. That's it.
Thank you, Alex. And I know the training that we did was really good, and I think only Barbara and Faith, were you there for the coastal zone management training? Commissioner Yates, sorry. No, so I think only Commissioner DeFranco and I were present for it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Of the current makeup of the commission. So I think it would be something that would be really good to perhaps send the material out to the other commissioners or work with them maybe offline to provide that material so that everybody's reading the same book.
Yeah, I can, Chair, I can definitely send, like that packet of information, both from the county and from OPSD, the State Office of Planning, provided information. So I'll have that sent out to the full commission and you guys. And then, of course, if you ever have questions about the SMA, if you have questions about CZM, I deal mostly with the SMA. April and her group deal with the CZM, but we're kind of all together in that. But yeah, you feel free to ask me questions, send me inquiries, anything like that.
CZM being coastal zone management.
Oh, sorry. Yes, SMA, special management area, and CZM, yes, coastal zone management.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Alex. We appreciate your time on that. Agenda items for next meeting.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to announce that we have no active agenda items for February. We initially had a scheduled change of zone and also a Supreme Court remand for the Bolton special permit that were tentatively scheduled for February, but both of those have been pushed for additional time. That said, sounds like we may have a chance for a little bit of a break in February.
We'll all keep our fingers crossed. And then any update from Montalani on the status of compliance with their condition to connect to Waikoloa Beach Resort?
I believe we're still either awaiting information or still drafting communications with them. Yeah. So we'll make sure that you get that information as soon as we have it.
Thank you. Moving on to announcements. The Leeward Planning Commission's next monthly meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 17th, as we just heard. There's a chance that there may not be any agenda items, so we'll be notified within a week, right? Of whether
Yes. So our requirement would be to get the agenda to the paper tomorrow for publication next Friday, but because we have nothing on the agenda right now, I think it's pretty safe to say that we're gonna meet back with you folks in March.
Okay, well, looking at March then. So by then we're looking at West Hawaii Civic Center as a physical location. Will we be having a physical location for the March meeting?
So that remains to be seen. I think the governor's emergency proclamation pushed that through to the end of February. However, if cases continue like they are, the governor obviously has the ability to extend that as necessary.
Okay. And then I think the last update, Noriko circulated our financial disclosure forms. Those need to be completed by January 31st for the 2022 year. So if we haven't done that, let's get those into Noriko by the end of this month. Anybody, any other updates? Okay.
Oh, I don't know if there's questions or there was a planning commission, a planning commissioner who was in front of county council yesterday, who was the nomination was voted down to fill the planning commission. So if that is a question that was going to come up, that's we're working on filling more commissioner seats.
That was my question. Thank you.
I figured it was. Shane Vincent was the name of the applicant.
Really? Oh, okay. And there's two seats open still? And what communities?
I don't know offhand. Director, do you know?
North and South Kohala.
Yeah.
So basically from Waikoloa, Hawi, Waimea, those areas.
North and South Kohala. Okay.
Yeah, because it's the judicial district, it's a little bit different. It doesn't follow the council district. If you have specifics, shoot Maya an email. She'll be back at the beginning of the week and she can drill down on those judicial district areas.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Looks like that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Paishon Duarte, second by Commissioner DeFranco. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned at 11:50 a.m.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you,
Have a great one,
everyone.
y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Aloha.
Hello.
Ahoy ho.
Aloha.
Aloha.